The Indian food market, a lot of times we see when companies come down over here, they see the products being sold, which are maybe $1 or $2 in their country, being sold for $4 in India. Now, the story for that is because there are a lot of tariffs which are there in India, which doesn't mean that the growth is not happening, but still these tariffs have to be accommodated. So if you look at the imported food segment, it's very different from the local FMCG segment. So when your companies come into India and they get into a joint venture with Indian companies, then the distribution margin and all these margins keep on changing. But when it comes to international food, you have these charges which are there. A retailer in India works from 15 to 40%, depending on the category and the volume of the product. The importers work from 10 to 35%, again on a similar lines. If the volumes are high, the importer is willing to work as low as 10%. But if the volumes are low, it's a very niche product. He tends to make anywhere between 30 to 35%. You need to have a distributor in India. It's impossible to do business in India without distribution, because it's such a large and vast country that without a distribution network, which is efficient enough to take care of the length and breadth of the market, you need a distributor. So you need anywhere between 8 to 12% for that distributor. We also have a model of super stockist where you hire someone to be your super stockist, which is like more of a logistical partner. So these guys are situated in large hubs like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata, and they have these large warehouses where they charge you about 5 to 7%. But then they further down create a distribution network for you, and it goes to smaller distributors in smaller cities and towns in that region. So you do not have to set up your own warehouse facility to do that. So my company is based in New Delhi, whereas I have a super stockist in Chennai who helps me to enter markets like Trichy, Kanyakumari, Madurai, which are smaller markets where it's very difficult for me to send goods directly. So I use that super stockist to help me with the logistics. Wholesaler is another kind of a distribution network in itself, where wholesalers play a very important role because their penetration is much deeper than anyone else. You have these wholesalers located in different cities who again feed to these smaller retail guys who come and buy 2 and 3 pieces. But because, as I said, that the market is such a vast market and traditional stores are the main source of sales in India, so these wholesalers also play a very important role. The clearing and forwarding agents are the agents which clear your shipment from the customs. So they charge you about anywhere between 4 to 6%. So when you add up all this adds up the cost of the product. So any product which leaves from most of the countries in the world would start at about $1, and by the time you see the maximum retail price in India, it's about $4. So you have to multiply it by 4 for ambient products, for 5, multiply it by 5 for chocolate or high value products, and for alcohol beverages, it's about 10 to 15 times. So any €1 bottle of wine sells in India for 15 euros. So that's the distribution network in India. Now, this is a small, brief chart on the grocery outlets in India. So as mentioned earlier, that traditionally India has been the mom and pop story, and the mom and pop story has been very intact and still controls anywhere between 85 to 95% of the market. So if you look at the number of stores in comparison to the modern retail or the organized stores where, everything is purchased by purchase orders and you have merchandising and you have sales officers sitting over there, the traditional stores do not have that space. They're anywhere between 700 square feet to 1,200 square feet. And the owner of the store is always sitting over there. So he understands the customer much better. He has an interaction with the customer, and he's able to communicate a lot of times information that you have given to him with the customer, creating a link between you and the customer and creating that edge where an organized retail doesn't have that facility, but has the facility of space. So if you want to do sampling, then organized retail is much stronger in terms of sampling and is able to give you deeper penetration because they are situated in malls and other locations, which is heavily, densely populated. And there are a lot of footfalls, which creates that avenue for you. I'm not going to go into the numbers. The slides would be there with you because it doesn't, if I give you the growth story, it's been intact and has been there. On the social media side, we see huge potential for social media, and it's playing a very important role in India. Now, politicians in the last 5 to 7 years, especially the BJP, has been using social media to be able to penetrate voters. And you can understand that, this rise of augmented reality has taken the Indian youth as well as the Indian middle-aged men or women by storm. These are people. You need influencers at social media, and social media plays a very important role, especially in small towns where some the product is not available, but the information about the product is reached through social media. And then these guys use online retail platforms in India like Amazon or Big Basket to buy those products because the aspiration is still there. So that is something which social media helps on. Also, it helps in, the millennials have always been switching sides. They are not loyal to the brand. They want new products every day. So this keeps them updated on what are the launches which are happening in India or for anywhere in the world. And the trends are also copied from social media. So if there is a trend which is going on in Peru on quinoa, it goes to US, and the same trend then translates to the Western European countries, then Eastern Europe, and India follows the same trend. So the trends which are going on around the world are followed in India through social media. It basically disseminates the border. It gets you fast access and faster information on what's happening in the world. And that basically translates into business for a lot of companies like us. We see a lot of companies having their own social media handles. They have companies and agencies which they hire to create social media awareness for products and strategies, as well as new launches. And in fact, certain times, there are quizzes available on social media which would ask, the companies asking for flavors which they would want consumers to buy, and they would create those flavors based on social media results. The influencer market, as I earlier mentioned, is playing a very important role, and there are certain influencers which help you to gauge the market as well as create more awareness. You have certain health gurus which would promote your product. And similar thing happens in the diplomacy of social media, which has been working very well for a lot of diplomatic missions in India, where they use social media to create awareness about the product and their country, which is very important because a lot of times you find that the product might resonate, but the country doesn't get reflected. So brand Australia, brand Queensland, brand New Zealand, all these also have great influences in India because people believe that products from these regions are cleaner. They have a vast, appeal in the audience, and that's something which is very much required. These are some of the market sizes. So India total food market is about $530 billion, and it's projected to grow by 2020 to $1,250 billion, which is almost 2 times in the next almost 3 years, which is the kind of growth that India is looking at because it's the market is booming at a fast pace. And processed food industry on the other side, if you look at the growth story, it's growing at 4 times. And you see a lot of processing parks. The government has invested in food parks all across India. In fact, in the budget recently, they mentioned that they're bringing up another 28 food parks all across India. So you would see the growth story of processed foods in India in a much bigger way than you've seen in the past. The average rate of growth in India has been phenomenal, and it's been growing at 27% for the international category. So that is something, again, that every company should look at in terms of the Indian market. We are the 10th largest food consumer in India, and we are projected to be the 5th largest by 2025. So that's something which tells you about the consumption trends in India and how that consumption will help you and your brand to grab that share of the market for the Indian subcontinent. These are some of the trends or something that we've seen in the past where the health food category has been growing at a fast pace of 95% year on year. Today, the market in itself is about 65 million. Similarly, canola oil has been seeing a growth of 300%. Primarily, canola oil was coming in from Canada and UAE. The UAE product is predominantly the same Canadian product. India doesn't allow imports of oil seeds. So a lot of these oil seeds get into UAE, gets processed, and the bulk oil comes into India. We've seen some shipments from Australia as well as coming in, but it's not, it's still not, it's just the tip of the iceberg, and there is huge potential for canola oil India from Australia. Fish like Basa has been tremendously growing again in the market with a growth story of 100% and having a market share of $50 million US. Pork meat, which again, India is not associated with pork meat. You don't believe. A lot of times when I travel across the world, I hear people that do not believe that Indians eat meat, or they understand what pork meat is or what lamb is. But what we find is that there is huge demand for pork meat in India, and most of the pork meat is coming in from Spain, Chile, Belgium into India. And currently, it's $21 million worth of pork meat coming in India. Breakfast cereal, again, not something which is staple to us, but what we find is that the growth of breakfast cereal has been growing. The middle class has been accepting breakfast cereals. Mueslis have become very popular in India, and there are a lot of local brands which are selling mueslis in India. The breakfast cereal market, again, is about 12 million. This is, again, I'm talking of international market, for international category of products. The total market of breakfast cereal in India is about 140 million US dollars, out of which 80% is controlled by Kellogg's, and the balance is by different brands across India. The sauce category, again, sauces, people want convenience, and sauces have played a very important role, from pasta sauce to pesto sauce. People have been buying these sauces all across, and different brands from all across the world have potential in the Indian market. Sugar-free jams, which is somewhat part of the health food category, but the free culture has been, taking India by a storm, and you see that a lot of times these sugar-free products or fat-free products have great resonance with the consumers in India. So consumers want to have an healthy option. So if you give him a healthy option and even ask him for a premium of 10 to 20%, he's willing to buy that because he believes that it's healthy for his family. Gluten-free products, which has been a recent trend in the last 5 years, we've seen growth happening in this segment because of the fact that there are a lot of celiacs in India. Besides that, also people believe that gluten-free would help them reduce weight, which is a fad, but things are going in this direction, and the market is at about $2 million US. Something that I wanted to touch base about, what is the India strategy? What should be the India strategy for any company which is wanting to come to India? First of all, you have to have India on your radar. You cannot leave India and believe that, okay, fine, I have much mature markets like Singapore, Japan to enter, and it's a tough market because I've heard some stories somewhere. Please do not go by hearsay. Visit the market, understand the market, and then try to create a strategy for the Indian market. That is something which is going to help you take the market in a long view. It should be a 10-year strategy. Don't come for 1 year, do some small sampling bit here and there, and then say India is not a good market, because without a well-defined and a long-term strategy, you cannot get into the Indian market. Due diligence of partners is something which is very important when you work with countries like India or any other country for that matter. You need to understand the strength of the company that you're working with. You have to understand what are the product categories that that company is already dealing in, so that you are able to compare that and bring your product categories. And you should believe that you should have a segment of the market which you are targeting, and the distributor or the importer would be in a much better position to inform you about what should be the right marketing strategy for that. Promotions in India, retail programming, sampling is the best way to get into the Indian consumer. If you are able to do sampling, wet sampling helps you get deeper inroads into the market. And that's something that everyone should look at. Trade media and PR, again, one of the possibilities, though it's a bit expensive to do that, but trade media plays an important role, because then it gets into the organized retail format, the HoReCa format, which is hotels, restaurants, and catering companies. So trade media helps you to do that. Trade shows, there are a few trade shows happening in India, which you should definitely attend. One is Ahar, which is in March, which is one of the largest food shows in India. The other one is Food Forum, which happens in Mumbai. And there are other shows from different companies which are happening in India. Sustenance of efforts, as I said earlier as well, that, you cannot have India come over here, do one small shipment or one pallet, and then say that India is not a good market for you. You have to have sustained efforts, have a marketing strategy, have a budget for India. It'll always come to the chicken and egg story, whether you invest when the market becomes large or you invest to make the market large. I always believe that it is always good to invest to make the market large. Some of the success stories like Ferrero and other brands would help you to understand what's going on in the Indian market. So you need to enter, you need to establish yourself, and you need to persevere to have great stories in India. Before I start the fun facts, I would want to tell you a story about Domino's. Domino's came to India about 16 or 17 years ago, where everyone made fun of the company, asking them that, are you crazy, that Indians are never going to eat a $10 pizza, because Indians would not spend that kind of money on pizza, and their pizza is not staple to them. Domino's was selling about 200 pizzas every day in the early days. But then they realized that to enter the Indian market, they need to indigenize. And they started using local ingredients, local breads, local poultry products, and local meat products. Over a period of time, till about last year, Domino's is now selling about 1 million pizzas every day. And the cheapest pizza goes as low as $1. So you can understand that the marketing strategy for them worked. And today they have about 1,000 outlets in India. And India is the second largest market for Domino's in the world. So that's something which helps you to, gives you a food for thought in terms of what should be the marketing strategy. So even 15 years, though not every company can be as large as Domino's to be able to sustain that, but we've seen successes for smaller brands also, which have created their own niche in the Indian market. So some facts about India. Each year India gives more, we have more people or more children given birth in India than the entire population of Australia. So you are adding in Australia every year to India, which for any company makes a lot of sense when you have a country being added to a country which is your prospective market. So that's why when you have India on your radar, that would help you to grow your market with such large population. Indians love gold, and Indian households or Indian housewives hold about 11% of the world's gold. So that's something to tell you about the Indian wealth story, which is quite intact and has been going. Indians still love preferred marriage over the free choice one, though it has sometimes the Western culture influences a lot of young youth, but we still find a lot of Indians coming from Australia, studying in Australia, or doing business in Australia to get married in India, and they still prefer an arranged marriage with the family's consent. And that's the reason which also talks about the fact that only 1 in 100 Indian marriages ends up in divorce. So that has been the reason for that, and that's something which is quite prevalent with people who even doing business in all countries of the world. We speak over 1,000 languages, and when we come to Australia and someone talks to us in English and gets shocked that, oh, you guys know English, is something which is a shocker for us, because we speak more than, as I said, 1,000 languages. And Indian population, 12% of the Indian population is English speaking, which is second after the US. The mobile story in India we have one of the cheapest mobile operations in the world. So if you look at calls in India, there are packages available in India where you pay about $6 and you get unlimited calls, unlimited data for a month. So you can understand that it's not that difficult for anyone to spend $6. And that's why we have more than 1 billion connections in India. A lot of people have 2 or 3 connections. One is a business phone, one is a family phone, and one might be another phone which he uses for other things. But people do have this in India, and we have more people using internet. Again, from the entire population of the US, we have more people using internet in India. So internet connectivity is very important in India. I'm not sure how many of the companies which are there in the webinar have visited India. This is the Delhi Metro, which has been a flagship of the Delhi, and now we've seen that being replicated in different cities of India, and that has been now the strength to bring the decongestion into the Indian, the congested Indian markets. This is again the skyline of Mumbai, look like any country of any European or American or Australian side, where you see that the bridge connects. This is called the linking bridge, and connects one part of Mumbai to the other. This is one of the malls in Delhi where you can buy any brand from anywhere in the world, from the Ferragamos of the world to the Louis Vuittons or to Christian Dior or Armani. All that is available in India for the Indian audience to savor, and to, that 20 million niche is the kind of people that come to these kind of malls. This is a street in Delhi, and to give you the idea of kind of prices which are there in Delhi, this has now been named the APJ Abdul Kalam Road, and you have houses over here which are worth about $100 million US, and still you would not find availability. There are about 200 houses on this lane, and the availability is not there. So there are companies and people with 100 million US dollars in their pocket and looking for a house on the street, but they can't find one. This is house of the richest man in India in the cluster of Mumbai, 37 floors, 7 floors of car park, helipad and everything. This is the house of Reliance chairperson or chairman, Mr. Mukesh Ambani. And that's, as I said, in the whole area of India where you find poor living with rich living with the middle class. So all of us live in coexistence and coherence. And this is the sign of that. These are some of the trends that we've seen, the growth story in India, how the demand for breakfast cereal, how the demand for milk, cheese, and eggs, how the demand for vegetables, how people are consuming more and more in terms of US $1 billion, and how the growth story has been quite intact. If you see, it's a great growth story going from 2011 to 2016. And consumers are spending a lot of money on these commodities or these products for their consumption, for their family. The laws in India have been, something which everyone has spoken about, and there have been challenges with that. Food Safety Authority, which comes under the Ministry of Health, is the predominant body for food in India. So they are governing all the food which is imported in India as well as manufactured in India. The Ministry of Consumer Affairs, again, is a similar body which looks after the consumer welfare and governs a story in India, which is the minimum retail price in India. So if you are buying anything in India, whether in a village or in a mall or in a 5-star hotel, it has to be sold under an MRP regime, which is the maximum retail price. And so you cannot sell the product without any higher value. You cannot sell it more expensive in a different store. And this is a law all across India. Ministry of Commerce and Industry and Ministry of Agriculture handle different bits of the Indian story. And this is the label which is there for the Indian market. This is, if any one of you is exporting to Europe, most labels in Europe would be there. Similar to this, there are about 17 requirements which are there. The only ones which are different for India are the green dot, number 4 that you see, which is basically to tell whether the product has vegetarian ingredients or non-vegetarian ingredients. So if it has non-vegetarian ingredients, then you have a similar logo with brown color. You need to have a food safety logo and number, which talks about the history of the product as well as also the traceability of the product in terms of who has imported the product in India. The import tariffs, again, something that we hear about the Indian story. We have tariffs ranging from as nil. Nil is basically zero tariff. So if you're importing certain products like salt or sugar, the tariffs are nil. Whereas there are categories where the tariffs are 180%, where something like wines and alcohol, it's 180%. There is an additional duty, which is 10%, which has just been added about 4 days ago in the union budget in India. And then there are other cesses as well as the GST, which again starts at nil, which is 0%. So if you're buying a bread in India, it's at 0%. But if you're buying Coca-Cola in India, it's at 28%. So, you have different goods and services tax on different category of products. This is the bifurcation on how the calculation of imports happen in India. So you have the cost of product, you have the basic custom duty, you have the cesses, and you have the calculation in terms of GST and the total duty which is there on the product. So this is again for something, you guys will have the copy of the presentation and you can definitely look at it and do your own calculation. So the forum which I represent, is started in 2009. We almost import about or close to about $5.2 billion worth of products in India. We have 1,600 brands from all across the world. We currently have about 5,220 members, in which 170 are importing firms, about 65 are trade commissions and trade bodies from different embassies and diplomatic missions, and about 5,000 are A-plus retailers, which work very closely with us in terms of promoting products into India, which are coming from all across the world. Our members are importing from 67 countries and have been increasing the number of countries. We see a lot of South American countries which were not looking at India a few years ago have been starting exporting to India. So from Peru to Ecuador to Colombia, we are seeing a lot of these products coming into the Indian market. These are some of the countries that we import from. Though Australia is there, but I still find that there's a huge potential for Australian products, and there's a huge market which is there for the Australian brands in India. These are some of the retail, partners that we work with, from Godrej, Nature's Basket. These are the organized players, actually. The Food Hall, Hypercity, Reliance Fresh, Big Bazaar, Spencer's, Walmart, Star Bazaar, Nilgiris. A lot of consolidation of businesses happening in India, and you see Future Group, which is one of the largest organized retail groups in India. They're buying up a lot of brands. So Food Hall, which was owned by Future Group, now has recently bought over Hypercity as well, which is adding to their total consolidation in the Indian market. These are some of the organized retail as well as online companies. Like Flipkart does a lot of food in India. Amazon has foods which they're selling online in India. And online in India is growing at a very fast pace because consumers in India are looking for convenience. You have grofers, and then you have these travel retail stores, which are WH Smith and Relay, which again end up doing a huge chunk of business, especially for the impulse buy categories in the Indian market. So, now I'm going to show you a small video of something that we did with the US Embassy or USDA, where we were told that they wanted to create a market for certain category or US origin products in Goa, which is a small town, which is not a very big town, but has great influence over the Indian market. There are a lot of tourists which are there, and a lot of local, consumers which have a lot of potential, but it's an untapped market. So what we did was, we took these US origin products, went to the chefs in Goa. We selected about 10 outlets and told the chefs that you have to create recipes around these US origin products and talk to the consumers that how US origin products can be used in their daily cuisine. And this video, it's a 30-second video, but it will give you a brief on what we did in Goa last year. As an association, this is the last slide. So as an association, what we do is we do a lot of government licensing. We work with governments to make sure that they do not increase tariffs. We are giving representations on various tariffs and non-tariffs issues in India. We are trying to work with the government, whether it's food safety, whether it is Ministry of Finance, educating them of the reasons of the products from all across the world to be in India. Though Mr. Modi is asking for a Make in India campaign, but he also realizes that a lot of times the equipments or the ingredients are coming in from abroad. So if you're making bread in India, you need gluten. So that gluten comes in from abroad. So a lot of times these products come in from abroad. So we work with the government to make sure that these tariffs and non-tariff barriers are somewhat reduced, or at least make it make international companies to participate in India. We organize and run trade shows and events like AHAR. We have one of the largest participations in AHAR. We do an international pavilion over there, which is about 2,000 square meters. And we have countries like Canada, US, Chile, Tunisia, Ecuador, Colombia, Russia, UK, all of them participating with us. And we create B2B platforms for them. We create knowledge platforms for them. And we create, we are proficient in representing international trade in India, and we've been working for that for the last 10 years now. As we are a not-for-profit organization, we are quite unique in that aspect that we work for promotion of trade in India. So the whole story behind India has been promotion of trade, and the whole story behind FIFI has been that we are the voice of the food importers, and we are there to help companies come and explore the Indian market. If they have any issues, any concerns, we help them to guide them to get to the right audience in the Indian market. Because of the fact that we are not for profit and we work with various government and countries, we are able to also bridge the B2G factors. So business needs to also understand how government works. So we try to interact between the governments and different countries and help them to promote their products in India. We've signed MOUs with the Singapore Manufacturing Federation, the Polish government to promote their products into the country. And we are kind of the largest association which is focused on the international F&B, because most trade bodies are focused on larger issues. They're into aerospace technologies, which are large chunks. Food always gets lost sometimes into that large chunk. So being a focused organization makes it easier for us to do that. If you have any questions, these are some of the contact information that you might need to connect with me. I would be more than happy to, revert back to any questions or queries later as well for the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amit. We will be opening up for questions now. So if there's any questions you'd like to ask Amit, please go ahead.
Amit?
Yes, oh, sorry.
Hello?
Yes, please.
That's Rob from the
company. Just wanting to understand the tariffs, say, for snacks in India. What would be the tariff for Australian snacks?
So very frankly, most snacks categories, unless there is a free trade agreement, come at the basic custom duty is 30%, 30. And on top of that, there is a social welfare charge, which is about 10%. And there are two cesses, which is 2 and 1. So total would be about 36, 37%. Along with that, depending on what kind of snacks you're talking about. So if you have a snack which is made out of fruits, then it comes into 12%. If it's made out of nuts, then it comes into 18%, which is the GST. So that's the general sales tax.
Amit, Rob's from a chips manufacturing company called Veggie Chips.
So if it's chips, it's going to be 30 plus 10 plus 2 and 1, which is going to be about 37, 36 to 37, and another 18% is GST, goods and services tax.
On top of that?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Most chips in India, like kettle or other category of chips, which are there, sell at anywhere between $4.50 to about $6, coming in from UK, Europe, as well as US. This is the international category. Indian chips are sold for 10 cents. They start at 10 cents.
Yeah.
Sudhir, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, no, sure, thanks. Amit, this is Sudhir here from TIQ in Bangalore. I just had a question about organic food. That's, I think, the only area which we did not touch upon. Are there any particular opportunities for Australian organic food in India?
So there is no specific opportunity for Australian organic food. These opportunities for organic food in general. As a company, I have a company which is called Max Foods. I import organic foods from Europe, as well as UK, as well as South America. So there's a huge demand nowadays for organic food. The only challenge is the price point. Now, if you are selling an organic food which is anywhere more expensive to the range of 20 to 30% than the conventional food, it works. But the moment companies believe they're going to charge you double, the consumer is a bit wary that why are you charging me 2 times the cost? Whereas other brands in India are already available at about 20, 30% more than the regular product. Until unless you are able to give them a unique proposition, a unique value, then there are huge potential for such product.
Thanks.
Amit, thank you for that overwhelming presentation, but very commonsensical and realistic. Just a last thought, while there may be other questions in the listeners' minds. I think on nutraceutical foods, health foods, the markets for fitness, as India is beginning to be very, very health conscious. Any comments on that, if you could share?
So, when you look at the Indian audience, what we've been seeing over the past 10 to 15 years is that they're translating from regular foods to the free foods. So if you are going to offer a consumer something which he's been consuming, whether it is a jam or a mayonnaise, or for that matter, a salad dressing or a healthy snack. So I have seen the growth of granola bars in India, which has been a substitute as a food supplement or for a basically healthy snacking. So now the translation happened from breakfast cereals to granola bars. Now from granola bars, you are going into these all fruit bars, all natural fruit bars, which is made with dates and other fruits, nuts. So what we are seeing is that the transition is happening, and it's quite similar. So whatever, as I said, whatever trends they find all across the world, they get resonance or they resonate in India in the same way. So if you see trends of gluten-free products all across, the same trends are seen in India. If you see trends for health foods all across, then you see similar trends in India as well.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, Amit. Anyone else out there, if they would like to ask a question to Amit, please feel free.
Amit, this is Nandini. Few of our companies have joined in by telephone, so they couldn't see their slides. So they couldn't see your slides. So we will send them your slides to them. And if they have any questions, they will email it to you. Is that all right? They could hear you, but they couldn't see your slides. So they have come back and said, if we can, yeah. So some would like to get in touch with you afterwards. So if that's okay with you, we'll let you know.
Yeah, please.
Okay. All right.
And Amit, one last question, if I may. This is Gayatri from TIQ here in Brisbane. From your experience, working with international exporters, could you touch on one common mistake that international exporters or first-time exporters tend to do, while considering India, and also one major driver of their success in India?
So what we've seen is one of the mistakes the exporter does is that the first company which comes to their stand in one of the food shows, they would just go ahead and partner with him without understanding the market. They do not visit the market is a big challenge. They have to visit the market, understand how the market is, do their due diligence in terms of the importer that they're working with, understand the market in terms of where the target category represented by their product category. Because, if you are going to sell a premium product at a mass store, it's never going to sell. Also, consumers also need to get some value. Indians are very value conscious. So you need to have the right value of the product. Just because you have a product which sells at a premium in Australia or New Zealand doesn't mean, or Singapore for that matter, doesn't mean that the Indian consumer is also willing to pay the same price. When you look at India, always look at the idea that once you have even half of the population, 1/3 of the population, 1/10 of the population consuming your product, you would not have enough product to sell to India. So, that's the growth story which has happened with a lot of companies. So that's something which is there. So companies need to understand that India is not a short-term market. So they come here, do one trade show, meet the first guy, give the agency to him. And then when things don't work out, they say, oh, India has been bad for me. You have to have a long-term strategy. If you want to hire a consultant, it's good enough. Use the local offices. I have seen that local offices in India, whether it is TIQ or Austrade and other offices, have been very proactive. They know the right importers. They'll connect you with the right people. So have a strategy before you come to India. Just do not come to India and just sell something and then go back. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I just had one last point here. Amit, this is Sudhir here. Could you please, for the benefit of participants, can you please share if you will be there at FHA in Singapore, and if our companies can meet you there, in one of the days?
In all probabilities, I will be there in FHA, and I know of a lot of delegations which have been guided by a lot of embassies in India. So USDA is bringing a delegation of about 5 to 10 importers. And similarly, other countries are also bringing in delegations to meet their exporters from their countries. Definitely, they would be there. And I am going to be there, so definitely I can get in touch with them and meet them at their stands.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Amit. Hitesh, did you have any final words to say from your end?
No, thank you very much, Amit. You and your members are genuinely creating a very organized channel and way forward to Indian market for anyone willing to ride that road and that bridge. So thank you for all the inputs, very valid, very commonsensical, very blunt as well, and very to the point. I guess a lot of our listeners would have benefited. Nandini and Gayatri would be sharing your presentation onwards for them to even see those numbers that are mind-boggling, but also an opportunity given the largish growth that's being promised. So, for those who didn't know, Amit's got a Queensland connection, so he's been a student there. So he has warm regards for the land down under, and looking forward to working with Fifi and our willing exporters as they plan to look at India in their calendar and coming target year. Thank you so much for everyone who came on board.